Your retreat this year is entitled The Natural Evolution of Compassion.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean?
I think the idea behind the natural evolution of compassion is that rather than seeing compassion as a kind of fabricated state or something we manufacture, it's a chance to look at it as a force that we experience when we see the world in a certain way, when we see ourselves in a certain way and our capacities to connect and care, and we see our interconnection with all others, then there's just this natural flow of compassion that happens.
I think that's very nice to say force. That I never used that word, and I just learned it from you. And I think it's such first of all, I think it's true that it's a natural force that arises, but it's also very pleasure. It's a great pleasure to teach it that way, and to outline practice not as the creation of something, but the removal of whatever distractions get in the way of that natural compassion expressing itself. So it's not like you have to get to be a new person. You're already a person. And the endowment of human beings is that we have natural compassion.
So the evolution of compassion, given what you've just said, Sylvia, might be a process of subtraction, rather than addition. It's a process of peeling away and getting to something that's already there, something original. It's different than a retreat that teaches you to acquire virtues. You're saying that's not what this is, or to acquire more wisdom, or to acquire something. It's really a path of peeling away.
I always think of it as both, actually. I don't tend to use the word acquire because I think it fits too strongly into our sort of grabby mode of acquiring and having and holding and possessing. But developing or cultivating, I think, is not really antithetical to uncovering. You know, we do cultivate virtues, and we do cultivate and uncover compassion. And I think it's largely an experiment in awareness. You know, we look at how we pay attention normally, and we see that there is a lot to subtract. You know, our reflexive fears, our feeling we can't ever do enough, that we're not good enough, things like that, you know, we need to see and let go of. And there's also it's almost like the building up of a certain strength that happens as well, I think, in the process.
What is the relationship between, compassion and loving kindness, the divine abodes, what you call the benevolent connection, which is a wonderful phrase, and awakening or enlightenment? Are they just all one and the same? Does one lead to the other? Is it a precursor?
I don't think of them as precisely the same. I think of awakening and the manifestation of loving kindness and compassion as sort of intertwined. You know, they're mutually supportive. The more love and compassion we can uncover or cultivate, the more we are able to see things as they are, because our normal withholding patterns and ways of holding on and aversion and things like that won't be so operative. So we actually can see, whoa, this is how it is. Not as I've always been afraid, for example, but this is how it is. And so the practices of loving kindness and compassion, I think, are tremendous tools toward awakening. And then the manifestation of the free mind is said to be loving kindness and compassion and sympathetic joy and equanimity. So you could say they're the same in that way, but I think it's more that the force of awakening will express itself through those four Brahmaviharas, those four divine abodes, and so they kind of work together in that interplay.
Is this a Buddhist teaching and practice?
Yes, in the sense that certainly my introduction to this practice is rooted in the Buddhist tradition, and the Buddha is said to have taught it. And the language and the sort of languaging and the idiom of it, is very much in the Buddhist tradition. But clearly these are universal truths. It has nothing to do with Buddhism or becoming a Buddhist or, practicing them very ardently doesn't require a test of belief systems or anything like that. So you could almost say like the lineage or the origin, for me, of these practices is within the Buddhist tradition. So those are the methods and the style that I offer. But I would be astonished to discover that they don't exist, perhaps not identical practices or methods, but certainly the concept and the evolution of the idea of the opening of the heart and the expression of compassion and charity and so on. I'm sure they exist everywhere.
But the context and the vocabulary that you use is from Buddhism, is that?
Yes.
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 Mm-hmm. And Sylvia, you're known for attracting a lot of Jewish people to your teaching. But I also know you as at least partially identified as a Buddhist teacher as well.
Mm-hmm. No,
So-
and I'm very comfortable with both, with expressing that fundamental universal wisdom in two vocabularies, so that, as Sharon says, it's a universal wisdom. It can't be just true for some people and not for others. I'm very happy to have two vocabularies, and I think one of the great let me think what I'm looking for. One of the things that I know is that the practice of mindfulness, certainly, and the practice of loving kindness, being themselves free of dogma as techniques, have been very, very helpful for people with heart connections to other religious traditions as enablers of the goal of those paths, because fundamentally what we all want to do is clarify our minds so that we're available to connect in that good way. There's a line from Hebrew liturgy that is a regular part of the liturgy that says, "Purify my heart so that I may truly serve." And I think that means, as Sharon was saying before, let me take away from my mind those distractions, those confusions, those things that get in the way of my actually seeing life as it really is, being moved with my natural compassionate heart by the suffering inherent in life, so that I'm available to connect in those ways of kindness, friendship, and caring and consolation and appreciation.
So is it the case, given what you're saying, is it the case that these non-dogmatic teachings, whose maybe original context is in Buddhism, teachings of mindfulness and awareness, and what you call the technique or the technical aspect of waking up, has this become sort of the generic, modern generic contemplative practice that can be kind of like brought into any religious house? Does it matter what your religious observance is? Do these practices just kind of convey?
I don't think it matters what your religious observance is. I think these practices, they're very practical. They're practical practices. They're very pragmatic and systematic and expressed, I think, very clearly throughout the tradition. And they don't require a belief system or adherence to a dogma. You don't have to declare yourself a Buddhist in order to do these or reject anything else. They're available. And it's almost like the Buddha issued an invitation and said, here are the methods, try them out for yourself, see if they work. And both that spirit and the actual methodologies, I think, fit many places. And it's probably one reason why so much of the scientific research so far has been based in these kinds of practices, because they can be brought into many, many contexts without there being that flashpoint of like, oh, this is religious. This is defying my own belief system, or this is trying to inculcate a belief system.